You are in a room with someone you trust. The conversation is ordinary. A disagreement about something small, a tone that shifts, and then they say something. It is not even particularly cruel. It is just accurate, too accurate. They describe a part of you that you have spent years hiding, not just from them, from everyone, from yourself. Your face gets hot, your chest tightens, something ancient rises in you, rage, or shame, or a desperate need to correct them, to explain why they are wrong, to make them take it back immediately. In that moment, you are not reacting to them. You are reacting to a mirror you did not choose to look into. You are meeting your shadow. And whether you realize it or not, everything is about to change. If you have ever felt exposed by something someone said about you, something you could not quite deny but could never admit, then this is for you. This channel goes where the comfortable psychology stops. Subscribe if you are ready to look at what you have been looking away from. The persona you paid for. Most people do not have a self. They have a performance, a carefully constructed presentation designed to be acceptable, lovable, successful, safe. Jung called this the persona, the mask, the face you show the world so that the world will let you stay. You built this mask early. You learned which parts of you got approval and which got punishment. You learned that anger was dangerous, so you became agreeable. You learned that neediness was pathetic, so you became self-sufficient. You learned that ambition was selfish, so you became modest. You learned that sadness was a burden, so you became cheerful. You learned that sexuality was shameful, so you became pure. You learned that power was abusive, so you became small. Each adaptation was intelligent. Each was a survival strategy. But every adaptation required a sacrifice. Every acceptable trait you amplified sent its opposite into exile. The exiled parts did not disappear. They went underground. They became the shadow. And the shadow does not stay quiet. It waits. Jung understood that the psyche seeks wholeness. It does not want to be a curated collection of acceptable traits. It wants to be complete. This means that everything you have pushed away is still part of you. It is still registered in the ledger of your being. And the longer it stays exiled, the more power it accumulates. Not because it is evil, but because it is excluded. The excluded thing always returns with force, not as punishment, as physics, as the psyche's inevitable movement toward balance. The person who has not met their shadow does not know this. They believe they are the mask. They believe the performance is the person. They have invested years, sometimes decades, in making the mask seamless, and they will defend that mask with their life. Because the mask is not just protection, it is identity. To question the mask is to threaten everything they think they are. What the shadow actually is. The shadow is not your dark side. Not exactly. It is not a devil sitting in the corner of your mind, waiting to make you evil. It is simply everything about you that you do not want to be, everything that contradicts your chosen identity, everything that threatens your membership in the groups you belong to. For the nice person, the shadow is rage. For the strong person, the shadow is vulnerability. For the generous person, the shadow is selfishness. For the rational person, the shadow is superstition, emotion, madness. For the spiritual person, the shadow is lust, greed, envy, the crude desire for power. The shadow is not a fixed content. It is a structural position. It is whatever you have decided you are not. This is why the shadow is so difficult to see. You cannot see it because you have trained yourself not to look. You have built an entire perceptual system designed to exclude it. When it appears in your behavior, you explain it away. You were tired. You were stressed. You were not yourself. But you were yourself. You were exactly yourself. You were just the part of yourself you do not recognize as legitimate. Jung saw the shadow as the gateway to the unconscious. Not the only gateway, but the nearest one. It is the first thing you encounter when you turn inward with any honesty. And it is terrifying precisely because it is so personal. It is not abstract. It is not theoretical. It is the specific qualities you have spent your life avoiding, the specific memories you have edited, the specific impulses you have denied. the specific truth about who you are when no one is watching and you are not performing. The shadow contains your cruelty, your pettiness, your jealousy, your laziness, your manipulation, your cowardice, but it also contains your power, your creativity, your sexuality, your ambition, your capacity for violence that could have been righteous boundary setting, your capacity for selfishness that could have been self-respect. The shadow is not a garbage dump. It is a treasure vault with a locked door, and the lock is your refusal to look. How you meet it. You do not meet your shadow by choice. Not at first. The first encounter is almost always involuntary. It comes through crisis, through collapse, through the moment when the mask no longer holds and something else breaks through. Sometimes it is a breakdown that arrives without warning. You are functioning, you are successful, you are managing everything. And then, one morning, you cannot get out of bed. Not because you are lazy, because some part of you has gone on strike. Some part of you that has been carrying the weight of the performance has finally refused. The depression is not an illness. It is a message. It is the shadow saying, I am still here. You have ignored me long enough. Sometimes it is a relationship that forces the encounter. You fall in love with someone who sees through you, or you hate someone with an intensity that makes no logical sense. The hatred is not about them. It is about what they represent, what they have that you have denied yourself, what they are that you are afraid you might be. The relationship becomes a theater where your shadow performs nightly, and you watch in horror, unable to stop the show. Sometimes it is a mistake, a public failure, a moral lapse, a moment of cruelty or cowardice that you cannot explain. You tell yourself it was out of character, but Jung would say it was entirely in character. It was just the character you do not acknowledge. The shadow does not make you do things against your will. It reveals that your will was never as unified as you believed. Sometimes it is a dream, a terrifying figure that pursues you, a dark twin, a murderer, a monster. You wake up relieved that it was not real, but Jung would ask, who is that figure? What part of you has taken that form because you will not let it take any other? The dream is not random. It is the unconscious speaking in the only language you have left it. Symbol, image, terror. The day you meet your shadow is rarely pleasant. It is usually the worst day of your life so far, because it is the day you discover that you are not who you thought you were, that the story you have been telling yourself is incomplete, that the enemy you have been fighting is inside your own house. Projection. The shadow outside. Before you meet your shadow directly, you meet it indirectly. You meet it in other people. This is projection, the unconscious mechanism by which you cast your unacknowledged qualities onto the world around you. The person who is obsessed with the selfishness of others is often unable to admit their own needs. The person who is disgusted by others' sexuality is often terrified of their own. The person who sees manipulation everywhere is often the most manipulative person in the room. They just call it strategy. The person who hates liars often lies to themselves most of all. Projection is not hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is conscious. Projection is unconscious. It is the shadow's way of staying alive while staying hidden. If it cannot live in you, it will live in your perception of others. Jung saw projection as the primary obstacle to psychological growth. Not because projections are inaccurate. Sometimes they are accurate, but because they prevent self-knowledge. As long as your shadow lives in other people, you can fight it, judge it, reject it, without ever having to own it. You can maintain your identity as the good one, the strong one, the rational one, while the qualities you deny animate your relationships from a safe distance. The problem is that projection destroys intimacy. You are never actually relating to the other person. You are relating to your own unconscious contents dressed in their clothes. You are fighting a ghost. And the other person can feel it. They can feel that they are not being seen. They are being used as a screen. This is why relationships between unintegrated people are so exhausting. Both parties are trying to get the other to carry their shadow. Both are refusing to carry it themselves. The result is a theater of blame where no one grows. The end of projection is the beginning of freedom. When you withdraw a projection, You do not just see the other person more clearly. You see yourself more clearly. You see what you have been avoiding. And that seeing is the first step toward integration. If this is making you uncomfortable, that is the point. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep going where the easy answers end. The gold in the dark. Here is the paradox that most people miss. The shadow is not just your darkness. It is also your light. The things you have repressed are not only your worst qualities. They are often your best qualities, buried because they were inconvenient, dangerous, or unloved. The child who is punished for being too loud becomes the adult who cannot speak up for themselves. The child who is shamed for wanting too much becomes the adult who cannot ask for what they need. The child who was told their creativity was impractical becomes the adult who has forgotten how to dream. The child who was taught that anger is sin becomes the adult who cannot protect themselves. These are not losses of bad things. These are losses of good things, of power, of voice, of desire, of boundary, of the full range of human expression. Jung said that the shadow is 90% gold. This is not optimism. This is observation. The same aggression that can destroy can also defend. The same selfishness that can isolate can also preserve. The same sexuality that can exploit can also connect. The same madness that can unravel can also create. The qualities in your shadow are not inherently negative. They are just unintegrated. They have not been brought into relationship with the rest of your personality. They operate in isolation, which makes them destructive. But integrated, they become resources. This is why meeting the shadow changes everything. It is not just a moral reckoning. It is a resource recovery mission. You are not just discovering your flaws. You are discovering your wholeness. The parts of you that you thought were missing were not missing. They were locked in the basement. And when you unlock the door, you do not find a monster. You find yourself, the self you could have been, the self you still can be. The person who integrates their shadow does not become darker. They become more complete. They become capable of qualities they could not access before. Not because they acquired something new, because they reclaimed something old, something that was always theirs. What actually changes? The day you meet your shadow, your relationship with yourself changes. You stop being at war with your own mind. You stop the exhausting project of monitoring every thought, every impulse, every reaction to make sure it fits the acceptable mold. You realize that you can have a cruel thought without being a cruel person. You can feel rage without acting on it. You can desire something without becoming it. The inner life becomes spacious. There is room for contradiction. There is room for contradiction. There is room for complexity. There is room to be human. Your relationships change. You stop projecting so much. You stop needing other people to be villains so that you can be the hero. You stop needing other people to be weak so that you can feel strong. You can see them more clearly because you are no longer using them to manage your own unconscious. This does not mean you accept everything. It means you see what is actually there, and you respond to what is actually there rather than to the ghost you have cast upon them. Your morality changes, not by becoming looser, by becoming real. The unintegrated person is often rigidly moral because they are terrified of their own contents. They need strict rules because they do not trust themselves. The integrated person has met what they feared. They know their own capacity for darkness, and because they know it, they are not controlled by it. They do not need external rules to keep them good. Their goodness is chosen, not enforced. It has weight because it has been tested. Your creativity changes. The shadow is the source of creative energy precisely because it is the source of the forbidden, the repressed, the unexpressed. When you open that door, energy flows, not just dark energy, all energy. The energy that was being used to keep the door locked is now available for something else. Art, work, relationship, life. Your sense of time changes. The unintegrated person is often haunted by the past, by memories they cannot process, by memories they cannot process, by versions of themselves they cannot acknowledge. The integrated person has metabolized the past. They have brought the shadow into the light, which means the past no longer operates as a hidden script. They are more present because they are not being dragged backward by what they refuse to see. Most fundamentally, your identity changes. You stop being the mask. You stop being the performance. You become something more fluid, more honest, more real, not perfect, not enlightened, but whole, capable of containing contradiction without splitting apart, capable of meeting life as it is rather than as you need it to be. The cost of looking away. Not everyone meets their shadow. Most people avoid it for a lifetime, and the cost of that avoidance is higher than most imagine. The cost is repetition. The unacknowledged shadow does not stay quiet. It acts out. It creates the same crisis again and again, the same relationship with a different face, the same failure in a different context, the same wound reopened by a different hand. You think you are unlucky. You think the world is against you. But you are encountering your own unconscious contents in external form, and you are refusing to read the message. The pattern will continue until the lesson is learned. The psyche is patient. It will wait your entire life. The cost is rigidity. The person who has not met their shadow cannot change. They cannot adapt because adaptation requires acknowledging what does not fit the current structure. They become brittle. They cling to their identity, their beliefs, their routines, because the mask is all they have. Without it, they fear there is nothing. And they are right. Without the mask, there is not nothing. There is the shadow, and the shadow is terrifying to the ego because the ego knows that the shadow could replace it. The cost is bitterness. The projected life is a life of resentment. You are constantly disappointed by other people because they are constantly failing to be the carriers of your idealized self or the containers of your rejected self. You are angry at the world because the world refuses to be what your unconscious needs it to be. This bitterness is not caused by the world. It is caused by the gap between the world and your projection, a gap that only integration can close. The cost is illness. Jung observed that psychological splitting often manifests in the body. The energy required to maintain the split between conscious and unconscious is enormous. It takes its toll. Depression, anxiety, psychosomatic symptoms. The body keeps the score of what the mind refuses to process. The shadow does not just live in the psyche. It lives in the shoulders, the stomach, the chest, the throat, the places where you hold what you will not speak. The cost is a life unlived. You came here with potential, with a range of being that was meant to be expressed. And you narrowed it. You narrowed it for safety, for approval, for survival. And you told yourself that the narrow life was the real life. But some part of you always knew. Some part of you always felt the constriction, the boredom, the vague sense that something was missing, that something was you. How to do the work. Meeting the shadow is not a single event. It is a practice, a discipline of honesty that deepens over time. There are methods, but there is no shortcut. The first method is attention to emotion, especially to the emotions that seem disproportionate. If someone cuts you off in traffic and you feel murderous rage, the rage is not about the traffic. It is about something older, something buried. If a friend's success makes you feel sick with envy, the envy is not about your friend. It is about the ambition you have denied yourself. If someone's vulnerability makes you feel contempt, the contempt is not about them. It is about the softness you were punished for showing. The emotion that exceeds the stimulus is the shadow speaking. Learn to listen. The second method is dream work. The shadow appears in dreams as dark figures, pursuers, strangers of the same sex, animals, criminals, demons. Do not dismiss these figures as random. Engage them. Write down the dream. Speak to the figure in imagination. Ask what it wants. Ask what it carries. The dream is the unconscious presenting you with what you need to see. The work is to see it without running away. The third method is active imagination. Jung developed this practice of entering into dialogue with the contents of the unconscious. You sit with an image, a figure, a feeling. You let it speak. You write the conversation without censoring. You ask the shadow what it has to teach you. You do not argue with it. You do not moralize at it. You listen. This is not dangerous if you maintain a dual awareness. You are not becoming the shadow. You are relating to it. That distinction is crucial. The fourth method is honesty in relationship. You tell the truth about what you feel, what you want, what you fear. Not to everyone. Not to everyone. Not to everyone. Not indiscriminately. To a therapist. To a trusted friend. To a journal if no person feels safe. The shadow grows in secrecy. It shrinks in light. Speaking the unspeakable is half the work. The fifth method is the body. The shadow is not just mental. It is somatic. You find it in chronic tension, in addictive behaviors, in the places where you numb yourself. When you bring awareness to the body, you bring awareness to what the mind has tried to think its way out of. The body does not lie. The body is the shadow's home. Learn to inhabit it fully. The work is slow. It is not dramatic. It is the daily choice to notice what you would rather not notice. To feel what you would rather not feel. To own what you would rather project. Over time, the accumulation of these small choices becomes a transformation. The paradox of wholeness. There is a strange paradox at the heart of shadow work. You do not become whole by becoming better. You become whole by becoming more complete, by including what you thought would destroy you. The person who integrates their shadow does not become a saint. They become real. They are capable of kindness because they know their cruelty. They are capable of courage because they know their fear. They are capable of love because they know their hate. They are capable of generosity because they know their greed. The integration does not eliminate the negative. It contextualizes it. It gives it a place within a larger whole. Jung called this process individuation. The movement toward the self, not the ego. The self is larger. It contains the ego and the shadow, the masculine and the feminine, the rational and the irrational, the light and the dark. It is the totality of what you are, and it is the goal of psychological life. Not happiness, not success, not virtue as the world defines it, but wholeness. The individuated person is not more moral than anyone else in a conventional sense. They may break rules that others keep. They may refuse roles that others accept. They may disturb people who need them to be predictable, but they are more integrated, more honest, more capable of genuine relationship and genuine work because they are no longer spending their energy on the performance of being someone else. This is the change that happens when you meet your shadow. You stop performing. You start living. You stop managing an image. You start inhabiting a self. And that self is not always pretty, not always nice, not always successful, but it is real. And reality finally is the only ground worth standing on. Conclusion. You have been running from yourself for a long time. You have been running since childhood. Since the first moment you realized that some parts of you were welcome and some were not. You built a life on the welcome parts. You exiled the rest, and you called that exile growth. You called it maturity. You called it being realistic. But the exiled parts have been waiting. They have been shaping your dreams, your relationships, your body, your fate. They have been the hidden author of your life. And until you meet them, until you turn around and look at what has been following you, you are not living your own life. You are living a reaction to it. The day you meet your shadow is the day you stop running. Not because the shadow disappears, but because you realize that the thing you are running from is you. And you cannot run from yourself forever. The psyche will not allow it. It will bring you back, again and again, to the same encounter, the same mirror, the same truth, until you are ready to look. Carl Jung gave us the map for this encounter, not to make it easy. It is never easy, but to make it possible. To show us that the darkness is not the enemy. The darkness is the unloved part of us that needs to be brought home, that the path to wholeness runs through the shadow, not around it. That the self we are meant to become is not the self we planned. It is the self that emerges when we have the courage to include everything. You do not meet your shadow once. You meet it daily. In every moment when you feel the urge to hide, to project, to deny, to perform. The practice is to turn toward that moment rather than away. To ask, what part of me is speaking here? What have I refused? What am I ready to own? The day you meet your shadow, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you change. You become capable of seeing the world without the distortion of your unowned contents. You become capable of relating to others without using them as screens. You become capable of living without the exhaustion of constant performance. If this names something you have been feeling but could not name, subscribe to this channel. We keep going where the easy psychology stops. Like this video if you are ready to stop running. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their darkness is not their enemy. It is their missing piece. Comment below with what you suspect your shadow has been trying to tell you. Not what you fear it is, what you suspect it carries. What gold might be locked behind the door you have been afraid to open. You cannot outrun yourself. And finally, you do not need to, because the self you have been running from is the self you have been searching for all along. Goodbye.